Hello again, Tori. Welcome back to the Cole Memo.
It's so good to be back. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to
Absolutely.
talk.
Absolutely. And folks, you are tuned into the Cole Memo. I'm your host, Cole Preston. Every episode is released in audio, video, and transcript format. If you'd like to find any version, like the video version, the audio version, or the transcript version, just look in the description for this episode. You'll find a link that will take you to our website, and that will display the links where you can find this episode on all platforms. If you're having trouble finding that link, just go to our website in the top right-hand corner. You can simply note the episode number. Um, so note the episode number. And folks, this is episode 69. We'll get back to why that's funny in a moment. Search up episode 69 on thecolememo.com and you can find this episode and all the links that we might reference during the episode. Before we start the show, just really quick, I'd like to remind you that our show is supported by listeners like you. So if you'd like to support our show, go to thecolememo.com/Patreon. It only costs $3 a month and you get our episodes as they release. Another great way to support our show, which is absolutely free, is to just subscribe to our show. Follow it, leave a positive review from wherever you're listening to us from, share it with your friends, all that good stuff. Your engagement and support is appreciated. Today is March 18th, 2024. Holy crap. It's episode 69 of the Cole Memo. And I think that's funny because we're sitting back down with Torrey Lisa. Torrey, remind us who you are.
Hi, I am Torrey Lisa, and I am a legally licensed courtesan in the state of Nevada. And I'm also a pro porn star, and I like to do hot girl shit. So I travel a lot, I film a lot, I do photo shoots professionally. I'm basically a full-time government certified hoe.
I love it. I love it. Yep, that's I will never forget that awesome promo we released for one of your first episodes where you said exactly that. And folks, if you haven't checked out, like I said, this is not the first time Tori's been on the show. In fact, the last time I sat down with her was in Denver for almost 3 hours. No, this was not the longest lead up to a porno that she's ever shot. We did not end up. Sorry, I was hoping somebody would make that joke. I meant to make that joke, but I we were so into the conversation that I completely forgot to say, hey, folks, we're about 2 hours into this. If you were expecting us to start getting naked, that's not what's going to happen in this show.
For that.
What's that?
I charge for access to something like that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you might find content like that on Tori's website. By the way, that's a really good plug. Where can we find you online?
All of the links to find my safe for work and not safe for work, like all my socials, all the platforms that you can find my adult content is on torreylisa.com. And that's TORREYLISA.com.
Perfect. Perfect. That was smooth. We fit that right in there. So puns aside. Um and one more plug for you, Tori, in case people wanted to see those episodes and our entire series on the legal sex industry. Just go to thecolememo.com/sex and you can find all of the episodes that I've released in this series. I'm displaying my screen right now. We released 14 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is that sometimes people will say to me, Cole, your podcast is so long. I'm not a person that generally looks at views, but my last episode, which was episode 14, the tour of Bella's Hacienda Ranch, was a 5 hour episode, and it is our all-time top streamed episode. So our longest episode has the most streams we've ever gotten, as far as I can tell. Like I said, I generally don't look at those, but I was pretty shocked to see that, yeah, 66,000 views on our tour of Bella's Hacienda Ranch. You can see me dressed as a cowboy out in the desert having a great time if you guys want to. Once again, that's thecolememo.com/sex. It's crazy. This started with me calling you from a brothel, and then it ended with me actually going out to a brothel.
Exactly. And the other plot twist is I am now at Bella's Hacienda Ranch. Not today, but
Right.
I am now officially doing tours at Bella's Hacienda Ranch. So I ended up going to Bella's after our last visit together. So
Oh
this will
yeah.
be number three.
Number 3. Yeah,
Oh, number three for me.
that's
Three
awesome.
different projects, three different counties. It's been fun.
Yeah. I'm curious, did you ever hear about the podcast? Did anybody ever see you on the podcast or?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They-
I
yeah.
remember that one text I shared with you that I
Love to hear everything I do or say. I've gotten a lot of feedback, whether it's about the topic itself or like, I could listen to you all day, keep them coming. So here we are, episode 69, no less.
hell yeah. Hell yeah. And I have seen you pop up. I mean, I've seen you pop up on other content creators, like shout out to Matt Colon, for example.
Yeah,
But I've seen you do other radio shows as well. So
I have. Yes. I like to shout to the rooftops how proud I am of the work that I do and why it matters. So I'm not shy about any of this. And if you've watched the previous episodes, I am so transparent about what I do that I use my real name. So, like, there's no secrets here. I'm an open book. I like to peel back the curtains, remove the mystery, answer questions, reduce the stigmas, and normalizing the conversation about legal sex work.
yeah. And I wish I would have recorded this after our last conversation. So for folks that have seen our last conversation, they will know that I asked you about your then. I don't know the case now, and if this isn't the case now, I apologize for bringing this up. But at the time, you were, I believe, dating somebody, and I asked you. I said, "Does this person like? Are they like totally just cool with you? Like they know that you do this?" And on the podcast, you said yes. But I specifically asked you, I was like you'll just call them and tell them what you do, and you're like, oh yeah. And I thought you were just trying to be funny on the podcast, but you literally called him afterwards, and you were like, hey, I'll call you sometimes after a scene sometimes, right? And like tell you what I've done. And this guy was this is just for my listeners. I wish I would have recorded this because it was just so funny. He's like, yeah, man. She'll call me and be like, yeah, just suck this guy's dick. It was crazy. And I'm like, the guy was like, and I'm like, yeah, good job, baby. I'm so proud of you. And I'm just like, you weren't
Yeah,
lying.
he definitely was super supportive of everything I was doing. And again, like very comfortable um, with everything I did. And so I didn't gatekeep what I was doing. Now, update, I'm single again by
Okay.
choice. It was a long distance relationship and it was really difficult to keep that together. And I'm so busy and he was going to school full time, working full time. It's just we really couldn't connect as much as we used to when I had downtime in the brothels and so on. So um, the last time I saw him was November of last year. I spent a couple of weeks with him, but it was just for the best. So I do wish him well. And, he was very supportive of everything I did. But yeah, I literally after we got off the the interview, I just picked up the phone and I called him without any, I didn't give him fair warning. I'm like, hey baby,
Yeah, he
you
had
know,
literally just woke up.
and he's like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
I put so you could hear for yourself. Like I surround myself with people that are supportive of what I do. If you are not supportive of what I do, that's fine too. You just won't be in my inner circle or in my periphery, if you will. I don't have time for critics and people that want to interfere with it. So either you're on board or you're not, one or the
right.
other. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just for me, like the reason I found it so notable and wanted to share it on the show was because I think I said this when we were speaking last, but it just must take some degree of confidence that I don't have, to
Oh,
be able. I just don't feel like I'd be comfortable, but like I like respect the fact that some people like they're not. It's almost like they're not selfish. Like I almost feel like I'm selfish because I'm like, no, if I'm with a person, they're my person.
right. And you have to understand that I also associate with people who are ethical non-monogamists. There's a
Right.
higher level of emotional intelligence involved in open dynamics. It doesn't make monogamy wrong or polyamory right. It's not that at all. It's just it's only for certain people that can. There's a term called compersion, okay, and people that are typically in the circles of ethical non-monogamy, multi-partnered, or in the sex work field tend to have partners and friends and so on that are have a high level of compersion. And compersion in its most boiled down essence is if you're happy, I'm happy. Okay, at the fundamental level. And so for me, compersion also means your pleasure is my pleasure. So when I am with a client and I am getting them aroused, it arouses me. So it's this reciprocity that happens. So the partners that I have been with or will be with intimately in a personal relationship will be driven by compersion to make that relationship work. And I've been very fortunate to have plenty of partners over the last 4 years that I've been on this journey that have been supportive and have been open. And like I demonstrated in doing that call on speakerphone after we finished talking, it's like, yeah, I don't make this up. He literally was super supportive of everything I did and wanted to know how my day went and what things I got to do that were fun for me and so on. So that becomes a normal conversation in the world that I'm in, whereas somebody else couldn't imagine having that conversation, let alone the relationship itself. And that's fine. You know, we're all wired differently. So I just align with those that can and will and do engage with me in a way that is supportive of my career, of my professional choices, of the fact that I am super independent. You know, like I don't rely on a partner to do all the things that I do in my life. It's just nice to have one to cheer me on and be part of my hype squad and to share those intimate details with.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, like I say, I feel like, yeah, that's a really good point, and you always have a good way of explaining things. Like you say, it's not about right or wrong. It's just about like what people's preferences are and what they're comfortable
Mhm.
with. And just because I may not be comfortable with that doesn't mean, like you say, it doesn't mean that I'm wrong or that you're wrong or anything else. It's just
Mhm.
simply our comfort level, you
Yeah,
know?
differences, comfort level. I'm not saying that somebody who's monogamous isn't as mature or as emotionally intelligent. It's not that. I'm just saying that
Right.
the emotional intelligence is a prerequisite,
Hmm.
regardless of your choices in how you partner with others, whether it's monogamous or polyamorous or swingers or sex workers, what have you. It's just a prerequisite
Yeah.
for it to work.
Yeah. One of the questions I meant to ask earlier when I asked, like, have you heard about the podcast, is I was curious, did you hear about like any effects from the podcast, like good or bad? Because we talked about the good and the bad. Um, I'm just curious, have you heard any like good changes or like bad
I mean,
changes?
within the industry or the people in it, or just by viewers as a whole.
Yeah, like, well, here's an example. Like Vice recently released a documentary on the Bunny Ranch, and I thought that was a really well put together hour.
It
But
was,
one of
yeah.
Yeah, it was really good, and people should check it out. People should really check it out. I literally bought Hulu TV just to watch it debut live because my first thought was like, these fuckers are stealing my story. But then I was like, well, they might. An abundance mindset, which is what we need to
Right.
have. And it's like, well, actually, they may bring more attention to my stories because people will see this and then go online and try to learn more. But I guess what I'm saying, what I noticed is that at the end of their documentary, they had the exact same result as I had, which is that the Bunny Ranch refused to talk to them. I just saw the other day.
I'm
Um,
like, really? Still?
right. But I just saw the other day that Kiki Lover, who recently left the Hoff brothels for many of the same reasons you left, she's
Mhm.
back and she
Yeah.
did a TV interview,
Yeah.
which I thought
So
was interesting.
I don't know the circumstances as to whether or not they were endorsing it or allowing it or not. I
True.
during the era that I was involved, it was a hard no for any type of media. Now, here's the thing, though. I too watched the premiere on Vice. My dear friend Alice Little, who I collaborate with in many different ways. We just got done filming for a week in Denver, and then the month before we filmed for a week in Vegas. Like we are constantly in communication with each other, and we're drumming up more. The adult roadshow is basically what we do. Um, is one of the main components of some of our collaborations, but she's one of my dearest friends. So when I saw that this episode on Vice was coming on and she was in it, yeah, I was watching the premiere live just like everyone else. I was super excited about that because what you're doing is creating a ripple effect of other media outlets going, oh, this is a fascinating topic. And we do need to talk about the pros and cons and ins and outs and really bring a level of education to the general public. Um, there's a lot of mystery involved in it, but there's also a lot of drama involved in it, and everybody likes the drama too. So, like, I really think Alice did an amazing job. I mean, I was watching it live, texting her, going, "Girl, you're on fire! I loved it," and so I have to thank her too because she's been very outspoken. She and I both have a very advocate approach to our rights as sex workers and about the legal brothel industry as a whole. And since we're both actively in it, we're going to talk about it. So, kudos to you for bringing this out to the public and for understanding that the more conversations we have, the better. And and the fact that you're still having conversations about it really shows where your integrity is. It's like you really want to expand on this more and build off of previous interviews. I wish Kiki the best. I'm hopeful because there has been some change of command within that network since I left. And I'm hoping it's for the better, but it's still what I'm detecting and what I'm interpreting is that it's still the same culture of we don't talk about that. And we need to talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the only way. I mean, the reason the people from the Hoff estate always were on TV is because it's the only way you could
Mm-hmm.
advertise, basically. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. Do you know,
And
is Suzette
so
still?
at Bella's Hacienda, she's like, girl, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like, talk to whoever, like, there is absolutely no implied restrictions. Not that anybody can override my decisions. You saw that I filmed from inside the very place that said, no, you can't.
Right.
Uh, I talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly about the second house that I was working at. At that time, I was taking a break and traveling and focusing on filming and photo shoots and what have you. Now I'm still doing that, but I'm also my schedule is a lot more packed because I'm doing the brothel touring again. I am traveling and filming and all the stuff that I've been doing, I continue to do it. And so yeah, I'm happy to continue the conversation and thank you for having it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I recently saw, which I was trying to pull up footage because this is easily proven false by my episode. There's a lawsuit that came out about not
Oh,
just Bella's Hacienda, sorry, not just Bella's Hacienda Ranch, but other brothels were named, and maybe
mhm,
you can tell us about this, what you know about it. But one thing that I saw that they said, and I'm just gonna play this footage really quick because this is false from what I understand from the lawsuit.
mhm,
They say that there's a fence surrounding Bella's and the women can't leave. I've been there. Um, and I'm also just gonna display some footage of Bella's Hacienda. There's the town wells right here. There's a railway right below here, and as the camera turns around, you're gonna see Bella's. Now, what you won't see is a fence. Um,
There's
there,
never been,
go
and
ahead.
that's what's crazy is that not only does your footage show that and prove it, but if you look in the historical Google, Earth photos, there's never been a fence. So to make claims like that, when I actually read the lawsuit line for line, word for word, and I just laughed. I'm sorry if somebody had bad experiences at certain locations, but I do believe that there is a level of embellishment, if you will, a misrepresentation of, these claims were just laughable. And, actually, I was at Bella's the day that that lawsuit was filed. And I was sitting next to Madam Bella. We were looking over it, and I'm going, that's ridiculous. That's not, I mean, how do they come up with this stuff? So frivolous at best. I really think that those that did speak up, because a couple of the other houses that were involved in that lawsuit did make some public statements, and good for them. And just I can't wait to see how this plays out. It's unfortunate that it everybody has to deal with it, but let's deal with it. Let's
Yeah.
get the truth there. A court of law is a really great place to get the truth out.
Well, and I think it's important to mention that I believe the legal professional behind this lawsuit is Jason Guanasso, who's been behind other efforts to try and am I right?
Yes, that is correct. And oh, Jason.
Look at me, the little stoner from Illinois, and we can put it all together.
Yeah, I no comment on Jason.
Yeah, I tried to reach out to Jason, and yeah, I've not heard back from him. I've reached out a few times. Hopefully, I can get him on because, as you know, I'm not afraid to talk about the bad things with this
Mhm.
industry. And in fact, I've got a few more episodes from, somebody who has been characterized as a critic of the system. I don't think she is. She definitely says some things that I don't agree with, but we also agree on certain things, which it's like the same. We had the same conversation you had, which is like we can't necessarily copy and paste what's going on in Nevada into other states because what's going on in Nevada is not entirely perfect, but it's also not entirely flawed, right? And so what we agreed on, you and I, and basically even the critics I spoke to, is that there is an answer and it's somewhere in the middle. But that does not include criminalization, you know?
Right. Decriminalization is always the first best step as we navigate how to go beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you said you have been to Bella's for at least a tour?
Yeah, I sure
Nice.
did. There, beginning of February for a couple of weeks. And my honest opinion is that's my favorite house so far. I think Madame Bella runs a really beautiful um, and professional environment. She's absolutely supportive of us. She's always looking out for our best interest. I think that my experience there, because the initial tour, she had reached out to me and she said, "Hey, I'd really like to talk to you." And we had multiple conversations over the course of the month. And I committed to a 2-week tour. I stayed a couple extra days actually than the original commitment. So I did extend a bit. And then I set my new tour dates because I loved it so much. I said, yeah, I'll come back. But the whole idea was she said, come on down, see how you like it. And, and curtains wide open. I got to sit down and look at things that maybe most people may not have access to because I'm trustworthy and so on. So I was able to see from multiple perspectives and even more in depth than, say, somebody coming in on their first tour. I knew what questions to ask and what to look for. And I was wowed. I really think that Bella's deserves more recognition in the places to go and people to see. The girls there are amazing and absolutely fantastic. The culture there, very, very professional, and the staff and so on. But Madame Bella is America's madam. She's been at it for 37 years. She knows what she's doing. And honestly, Bella's Hacienda is the only courtesan run brothel in the whole state. She doesn't have to be on site. We, as the working girls, can run that in her absence. And she trusts us because she only puts the trustworthy people in to be able to do that. So that is part of something that I think a lot of people don't realize is that the structure of a brothel is varies greatly. It is the only woman-owned brothel in the state that I am aware of. The last time I fact checked, that was the case. I have seen other brothels, unfortunately, closing their doors. When I was there at Bella's, um, the adjoining property in the same area, not owned or associated with us, but another owned by someone else brothel, their doors were closed. Nobody was coming in or out. So they may be on their way out the door. Maybe they closed temporarily for the season. But it was kind of concerning to me that if we're losing brothels because they're going out of business, what's that going to do to the industry? I saw another brothel shut down over the winter. They reopened it, shut down. They opening and closing, opening and closing. Bella's has been in continuous operation even during COVID. She made sure that the girls were not left stranded and without options. You know, she took care of everyone when everyone else was like, sorry, see you later. Give us a call when this is over. She went above and beyond for the girls. So like I see how much she cares about anyone and everyone that walks through those doors. And that impresses me. It really does.
Yeah. I wonder, I've started to wonder, and especially even how they framed that Vice documentary, it's on a show called Sex Before the Internet. I'm
Mhm.
wondering like if the internet not totally, but kind of killed the brothel industry. You know what I mean? Like in the sense that, you've got
No,
OnlyFans and all that.
okay, so yes, there is that. I mean, the thing is people want in-person experiences. They want to have time with a pro porn star like myself. They want to have time with the girl next door. They want to have access to the intimacy and the exhilaration of the in-person experience. COVID certainly put a dent in it. Okay. But I came into the industry after COVID was over and it was a very vibrant industry. But then the economy is also putting a dent in it. And I think that has led to what I was witnessing with, another brothel with, across the parking lot from Bella's, not even bothering to open, And so I look at the success of the brothels that are able to stay open despite the economy fluctuations, despite the COVID quarantines and so on, and staying and operating legally the whole time is quite an accomplishment. Now, do I hope that the economy has an upswing? Of course, because that's going to translate to more business. People will have more discretionary money, but the housing market and the economy and the precariousness of it right now has impacted to some degree, but it's not enough to just wipe out the whole industry. People are just looking at lower price points in order to access things, but there is no replacement for that in-person experience. And
Yeah.
those that have the means to access a luxury product, I am a luxury provider, regardless of which house I'm in. You will always get a luxury experience with me, and my prices reflect that. But I made money just fine when I was at Bella's. It's not a guaranteed income stream. It never has been and never will be. But I'm still doing just fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, like you say, that I didn't mean. I'll show you. I've got actually got a funny little Family Guy clip, a short Family Guy clip that I'll
Okay.
show you what I meant. And I think you know what I meant. What I meant when you see this Family Guy clip, you're like, oh, that's what you mean. But to your point, really quick, I do think Bella's sits in a place strategically, which is like very smartly placed, for lack of better words. So like the right next to the Utah border, so all of the sexually repressed Utahns can come over and, like you say, get an in-person experience. And I absolutely do agree with you that that is never going to go away. And I don't think that that OnlyFans replaces that. This is what I meant with OnlyFans. Here's our Family Guy clip for some comedy.
It. All right, let's do it.
Both of you are under arrest for prostitution.
It's not prostitution.
You paid her to have sex.
No, I paid her to have sex and we're filming it. So technically it's not prostitution, it's a porno.
Oh, well, as long as you're filming and selling it, it's legal. Enjoy your day. Remember, kids, she's not a whore if she's an actress.
This has been a message.
I love it. And it's actually true. Like,
Yeah. So I don't think that killed the brothel industry, but
yeah,
it certainly made, let's call it, legal sex much more accessible in, let's say, the East Coast. People that can't make it to Las Vegas, they're like, well, let's just film it and then maybe put it on OnlyFans or something like that.
really great because that is my territory. There is always that layer of protection because I'm already established in that industry. And you're right, it is legal.
Yeah.
But interestingly, you were talking about it's close to the Utah border, but it's also close to the Idaho border. It is the closest brothel to Utah and Idaho. It's at the 93 and I-80 crossroads. It's perfectly placed, in my opinion, very strategic and very successful as a result. But Utah has banned porn sites. When I traveled through Utah, because I travel 10 states consistently. In fact, today I'm in Montana. Like I'm constantly traveling. There are certain states that I can't get any of my work done. I had to hire people to handle the back end of my porn stuff and so on. So that when I am traveling through those states, most recently Texas also banned, porn sites and so on. So Utah, when I go to Utah, I can't log into my OnlyFans. My Utah subscribers, I lost all of them unless they are using VPNs. And Texas had an uptick of VPN searches. People are moving over to VPNs. It's like, I get why some states are concerned about underage consumption of pornographic material. But if you put that stuff behind a paywall, we're not going to have that problem. Okay. If somebody steals their mom's credit card and they're underage, okay, that's a parental controls issue, not a porn issue. And so I think that it's kind of unfortunate that these states are entertaining this concept of banning porn. I can understand as a parent myself, I'm a parent and a grandparent, that underage consumption of adult entertainment material does need to have enough barriers in place so that you can't just stumble upon it so easily. I get that part and I endorse that and I support that. My
I
pornographic materials, to a greater or lesser degree, everything's behind a paywall. And in the places where it is a little spicy, like over on Twitter/X, I have it set to 18 and over. Okay, so nobody's going to accidentally stumble on my X account if they're using an underage account. And that's by design. I'm not trying to market to underage, but I should be able to market to an entire state of consenting adults who want to log in and access it, and they can't now. So now they're trying to find their own loopholes to get around it so they can consume my content and the content of every other adult film star, positioned like I am. So yeah, we're in a little bit of a debacle with that now too.
how do the states can you like get around it by using Twitter or X? Because I mean, they can't just ban Twitter or X, or do they ban those posts somehow?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know, if I it's my interpretation and assumption
Hmm.
that people in Texas can access Twitter just fine. But they can't go on like Pornhub and OnlyFans and so on, things that are strictly meant for the distribution.
See, but
Um,
even that is a little. You're right. I think primarily OnlyFans is used for those services, but I've thought about starting an OnlyFans too, because some content creators do use it.
yes,
You know.
they do have safer work creators who are doing
Okay.
cooking series and like travel series, like stuff that has nothing to do with sex work or adult content.
Yeah.
Uh, it has become very unfriendly for us as adult content creators over on OnlyFans. It has become so restrictive that I'm to the point now where I'm just going to move all my best stuff over to other platforms because they have retroactively popped me and given me violations for content that's been up for 4 years that was perfectly fine at the time that I published it and has been perfectly fine for the last 4 years. But once they change their rules, then they go, oh, you just broke our rule. And I was like, but I haven't been breaking it for 4 years. You just recently changed the rule. So now I have to be super careful about what I put on OnlyFans as to not violate any of the many rules that we have now gotten ourselves into as a creator using that platform. I have to kind of sort and export a lot of the content that's been perfectly fine up until now. It needs to be moved to other platforms. So I am doing a transition to other platforms for that reason. But as OnlyFans was marketed predominantly, like they profited so much, they as in the OnlyFans machine, Phoenix International, they built that platform off our backs. And now they're doing us dirty. So I am just pivoting accordingly. There are other platforms, but platforms that are, like ManyVids and Clips for Sale and Loyal Fans and Slushy and Mint. And like, there's so many platforms out there. I can't even list them all, but those are just some examples of adult geared platforms that every platform can have vanilla content and safer work content. But let's be honest, it's an adult platform. And those states blocking those sites is ridiculous. They just need
Yeah.
to find that sweet spot in the middle where underage
Here's my thing.
viewers
Like
can't
kids
get
shouldn't.
to it as easily as they have been maybe in the years past.
Yeah. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed on the computer. It was like a parenting thing.
Yeah.
Now I know
But
that to your
when I
point,
And my dad was getting Playboy delivered directly to our house.
Yeah.
You know, like all I
Well,
had
and
to
that's the
do.
other thing. I remember as a kid going on road trips and we'd go to a gas station and yeah, I would just walk to a certain section and I could see all the porn magazines. Like, and it was on my parents to make sure I didn't walk over there. So in the context of the internet, it's on my parents to A, make sure I don't get on there, or B, set up. This is why parental controls exist on browsers and computers, to set up some sort of way to, if you're that concerned that your child is hell bent on seeking out that information. First of all, I don't believe in suppressing somebody trying to figure out what's going on, suppressing information. But if that's what your goal is, and if that's your concern, these tools exist. Like I would remember even in grade school, before we were allowed to use computers, we had to like sign off on a thing and we had to pass a test that said we knew how to use a computer. And one of the things, actually, just kind of funny enough, how porn got involved in it, they told us never go to whitehouse.com. Make sure you go to whitehouse.gov. Back in the day, I don't know if you knew this, Tori, but apparently
But, you know,
whitehouse.com was one of the like original big porn sites.
yep.
Um,
And I love that the industry was ahead of its time when the internet came out. The industry, ever since the internet was formed, has been out there. Okay. It's not like, oh, we just finally got around to publishing adult content. I mean, adult content was being captured on camera the moment cameras were invented. Like it's going to be created,
yeah.
period. It
And I don't
will
know if
be
it was just a,
created in multiple ways. But interestingly, the very same states that are putting these bans on porn sites or adult oriented sites are also the same states that have the most oppressive rules as far as like women's right to terminate a pregnancy. They also have the worst rates of education, sex education in their schools. They are the ones that are like, just abstain until you get married kind of approaches. And those do not work. Those do not work. And the curiosity, wanting to know the, pardon the pun, the ins and outs of sex, like the mechanics of intercourse and intimacy and particular acts that they might be curious about, are only a Google search away. They're going to find it. If we're not going to teach it thoroughly and appropriately in a way that promotes sexual safety, we need to be talking about preventing STDs and STIs in the schools instead of, saying, here's a condom, but we're not going to show you how to use it.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not good enough. We have to have more comprehensive sex education in every state. And that will reduce the number of people going, well, I don't understand, so let me go to the internet to figure it out. Let's help them understand from A
Right.
to Z all the ins and outs of sex education and quit being so freaking prude. It's dumb to overlay, especially in a religious realm, these criterias of being true and good and pure. I'm a pure person. So what are you really trying to promote here? You're promoting moral authority.
Yeah. And
And I don't subscribe to that. I just don't. So I think better sex education, better paywall options, and more parental controls. But a parent, in defense of parents, they can't be 24/7. Okay. They can put the parental controls, they can regulate the Wi-Fi passwords, whatever it is. There are ways that take effort on the parents' part, but even the best parents cannot prevent 100% a very dedicated and motivated teenager from going online and finding it somewhere.
right. Just like with drugs,
Mhm.
just like
So
with
let's educate
drugs.
them so they can make informed choices and to not be so curious or at a disadvantage of knowing what they need to know. I in my travels, I was recently soaking in a hot tub, hanging out with some early 20s nursing students. These girls were amazing, and in our conversations, you know, they were like, "So, you know, what do you do?" And I was like, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." And so I age verified all of them before I told them. I made sure they were not underage in order to have just a casual conversation.
Yeah.
We as performers and as, you know, legally licensed sex workers, we're not going to engage in a conversation until I know that you are age appropriate for that conversation. So this prime example, they're nursing students. I can see they are over the age of 21, let alone over the age of 18. But I had to get their verbal, like I verified that they were old enough to get the answer to the question they asked. And I answered them honestly. And they were like, "Oh, no way, tell me more." And we sat in the hot tub for a good 2 hours. And they were like, as nursing students, now here is where it really, the point I really want to make on this. They are nursing students. They know anatomy and physiology, and they know the biology of, you know, of how humans propagate, right? They know all that. They are formally trained on all that, but they still wanted to know what's the secret to a good blowjob. And I explained in detail what my process is and what sets me apart in the industry as an oral queen, so that they can be empowered and informed, even though they already had the quote information of the practicality of sex and making babies and what have you. They are a prime example of how they still don't know enough, that they still have questions, even as nursing students. The curiosity is there. They will feed that curiosity one way or the other. I just happen to be the perfect person to ask those questions. And I was very forthright. I said, I don't gatekeep. Let me tell you my secrets, you know? And I said, you know, when I film, the running joke with the Adult Roadshow is we're thinking of doing a compilation video of all the O faces that I create with my co-stars, because I had one videographer in Vegas pull me aside and he says, I've been working with this male talent for years now, and I have never seen that O face that he gave when you snatched his soul. You know, it's like, I am different. So I told them why I'm different, and how they can replicate that to their own comfort levels. I just gave them the information. I said, take what fits, leave out the rest. But these are nursing students. Cool. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Is that not a testimony to just how lacking we are in educating on the practicalities of intimacy in a way that's pleasurable for all parties involved, that's safe and sane and consensual? Let's have that happen.
Yeah. Well, I've got a question for you, but since you brought that up, I've got a question now that's probably going to pique the men's interest and make the women's eyes roll, or it'll pique the women's interest. Just, you know, you just went into depth. Do I want to give you, or do you want me to give you space to tell people your secrets on oral sex? Or is that a trade secret that you don't want to divulge?
Here's the thing. I don't gatekeep, but I am going to, for time purposes,
Fair.
general. Number one, interestingly and ironically, what people see in porn really isn't that pleasurable. It's very mechanical and it's very theatrical. Okay. So for lack of better terms, I don't face fuck. What you're seeing predominantly in those videos, far and wide, is an element of aggressive face fucking. And my clients don't want that. Now, some do. And I let them know we're not doing that. You're going to need to trust the process and allow me to do my magic. The magic itself is the fact that I don't make it a mechanical process. It is not just a hole that's being filled with friction. It is a very sensual, very slow and gradually increasing process. It is a multitasking process. It is not an involvement of a mouth being open. It is everything from what I'm doing with my tongue. For example, when I am deep throating, guess what? I still got more room for my tongue to go even further. Okay, so I could be fully to the end of as far as I can go, but I will get that tongue out and use it in other ways beyond the stopping point. I have skills. I have the ability to do these things that other people may have to practice years to accomplish. But it's hands, it's sensory on other parts of the body being done simultaneously. It's literally like worshiping the person that I'm with, and they're not just their anatomy, but just the sensations and so on that come with it. And like I got a text yesterday saying, I love how you make me feel. Okay. So it's not just a smash and dash in and out. I'm not that girl. I will treat you like the king you are. And so for me, it is a different approach. It is a different process. I take pride in it. And a lot of times it's clear to me that people have been going decades with mediocre to bad blowjobs because that's all they've known and all they've ever done, because they're trying to replicate what they see in porn, which is not actually the best representation of how to give a good blowjob. There are elements of entertainment, and it's a visual realm in adult content. It's all very visual. So you're going to give them, you're not going to be able to see what my tongue is doing underneath everything because it's hidden. So it does make it different for the recipient, whether it's an adult film star, whether it's a client, whether it's a lover, an intimate partner. It's different with me, and I take a lot of pride in it, and I genuinely love doing it, and it gets me off just to be able to do it. And dudes love that. They love to know that I genuinely enjoy it. I've had people go, oh, I mean, like clients go, well, I'm not going to make you do anything you don't want to do. I'm like, what made you think I don't like that? And it's because previous partners have said, ooh, that's dirty, or ooh, I don't like it, or ooh, it's just not for me. And they think all women don't like it because a few in their past may have complained or avoided it or just kind of like said straight up no. For me, I enjoy it. So I'm going to give you the ride of your life with that and anything else. I have some party tricks. Party favors, that's the other thing. A lot of times I get approached going, can you get party favors? I'm not that girl. Don't come at me with that. I'm going to give you a professional experience. And so when guys come in and they're like, they think they have to do this thing or that thing or whatever, I'm like, no, just trust the process. Let me do my magic and you'll see. And they're like, holy mother of God, I never knew it could be that way. That is consistently what I receive in feedback from people who have been able to enjoy that magic, and they go, holy shit, that was crazy. And I loved it, and I can't wait to do it again. My client retention rate is high for a lot of different reasons. That's just one of the many.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking that tangent. To close, I thought you brought up a really good point before we went on that tangent that we do need better sex education. And in fact, I would say that maybe kids seeking out sex education on the internet could not be the greatest outcome, because there is, and I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum, but there is like some hardcore porn out there. And again, I'm not harshing anybody's mellow. I'm just saying that for some people, it could give them an unreal expectation, or maybe just a misunderstanding of what is going on, and like one of the things you've explained on former episodes, like, before I talked to you, I always thought that like BDSM and all that stuff was like a little bit abusive, but you taught me that there's like a lot of like consent involved, and it's like you really talk
It's
about it. And
always based on consent.
so, but to somebody that just tunes in, and that's how I came across it. I was like, what the fuck is this? And I had to click on it. You know what I mean? And then you just see it and you're like, this doesn't seem like it did. I mean, obviously they agreed to do it and whatever, but like when you watch it and when you're not explained like you explained to me,
Mhm.
you could misunderstand something, and then come away with a bad understanding of how sex should be, versus if we just fucking educated our children.
Right.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
consent is the fundamental part of sex education. It is a fundamental part of um, explaining what BDSM actually is. It is not powering over, it is powering with. It is an energetic exchange, it is a power dynamic. Everything, if done correctly, because there are so many fake DOMs out there that are just out there to exploit and be abusive. There are a lot of abusers out there that will target unknowing subs who want to try something for the first time. I recently had a friend that I've known for years say, "Hey, I'm navigating these waters. I'm trying new things, but I'm having trouble finding somebody safe. Can you recommend somebody?" I said, "I absolutely will." And I did. I made those connections so that they can have conversations, and I knew she would be in good hands. At the same time, when I was in Denver, okay, the last scene that I filmed on the last day was a BDSM scene. It was S&M, okay, sadism and masochism. It involved bondage. It involved impact play. It was very intense. And I had bruises all over me that I was so proud of, that people would look at those bruises and go, "Oh my God, who beat you?" Like, who abused you? Like, what they do. And it's like, no, 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 you don't understand. True BDSM at a professional level, there's a term called RAC, risk aware consensual kink. It's an acronym for risk aware consensual kink. Somebody like me who is trauma informed, who is always consent based in everything I do, in and out of sex work, I won't even hug somebody without asking them first, "May I hug you?" I am driven by consent because my whole world is built on that foundation of consent. Any touching of any human should be something you get consent for. Now, that may seem extreme. Some people are going to go, "What? I should ask before I hug?" Yeah, actually, you should. But if you don't, as long as your friends are cool with it. But when I'm meeting somebody for the first time, I'll say, "I'm a hugger. May I hug you?" And if they say I prefer not, I say, "No problem. I respect that." you know? And so I can't tell you how many times guys come up and think, "Oh, let me just grab her ass. She likes it." No, you're going to ask first.
Yeah.
This isn't Costco. You don't get freebies. You don't get samples. You're going to ask. And if you don't, then that puts you in a different category, and I'm going to handle you differently. We're going to get some things very clear and understood up front before we have any further interaction.
Yeah.
So consent, teaching consent in sex education. Hello, that's like topic number one, consent.
Yeah. Well, folks, if you haven't seen our series on the legal sex industry in America, I encourage you to check it out at thecolememo.com/sex. I also encourage you to check out the Vice documentary that we mentioned earlier. I think the more information out here, the better. I will say that I think, and of course, it's hard to pack this much information in an hour. As I said earlier, this series is pretty long, the series that you can find at thecolememo.com/sex. I think my series has a lot more information, um, you know, compared to what they could fit into an hour. Again, it's hard to fit everything into an hour. This is a multi-hour series. I'm just trying to promote my own series because, for example, I spoke to Dennis Hoff's the last chef that cooked a meal for Dennis Hoff. Spoke to his handler. I spoke to many people that worked with and for him. I spoke to Torrey Lisa several times. I spoke
Mhm.
to Caitlin Bailey, who is an awesome person and host of the Oldest Profession podcast. I highly recommend you check all of that out. I spoke to the Alice Little, as
Mhm.
we mentioned earlier. And of course, as I started the show with, I ended up visiting a brothel itself. So, Tori, I want to thank you. As you can see, you were my first guest in this series. So, thank you so much for
The broth
helping.
cherry.
What's that?
I topped I topped the brothel cherry on this series.
That's right. You were the first guest to call into our show from a brothel, which is yeah, I'm never gonna be able you took that title. So um and I just want to thank you for coming onto the show so many times, giving me so much of your time. And I look forward to the next time that we speak. But I just want to say, for the historical record, I'm really proud of what we've done together because I am not aware of another series. And if you are listening right now and you're aware of a series or piece of media that is extremely expansive on the sex industry, send it my way because I'm always looking to learn more. But I'm so proud of what we came up with because I truly do think it's like a little time capsule
Mhm.
of what was going on at the time. The good,
Yeah,
the bad, and the
yeah.
ugly. So
And it is a journey. It's an evolution of things. So thank you for having me for so long. I mean, this has been, gosh, what, a couple of years now in the
couple year
making?
project, yeah. And
Yeah.
what's funny
So,
is whenever I heard people working on projects for a couple years, I'm like, I'll never be able to do that. And then here I go with this project.
but it's a great topic to continue the conversation about. So thank you for continuing that conversation. Thank you for having me on. I guess this is my fourth appearance. And episode 69, no less. So perfect. In fact, I will say this with the Adult Roadshow, we have an ongoing storyline about Love Potion 69. And the fact that I was born in 1969, as my youngest son says, Mom, that was the best year to be born. It's so perfect for you know and for those that don't know, my youngest son, I have all adult children, so they know what I do. It's actually just so casual for them to know what I do and talk about it. But the thing is like this whole 69 thing is threaded throughout my life, and not just the year I was born, but also the storylines with the Adult Roadshow. Y'all have got to go over on Twitter and follow the handle Adult Roadshow, and see what's going on. We've got a lot of things in the pipeline, a lot of great talent. Press releases went out about it. But what you're doing, 100%, thanks for letting me be episode 69.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was telling you before we got on air, but just for our listeners, this one's being released the day we recorded because I've literally been holding back episodes so that Tori and I's schedule could match up for episode 69. So
Thank you. And I'm so glad it lined up. It's perfect. It's perfect. So keep up the good.
absolutely.
And thank you to
Absolutely.
the viewers that have watched these episodes, whether it's in part or in full. Be sure to like, share, comment. Like, your engagement on social media always helps. Even if you don't agree or do agree, doesn't matter. It's a conversation that we need to have. And I'm sure there's plenty of critics still out there. Okay, let's talk about that. What are your concerns? What are you misinformed about? Um, this conversation is important. So thanks for continuing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, and I guess that's my last thought. It is interesting, um, a lot of my other content is obviously cannabis related, so maybe
Mhm.
that's why it doesn't resonate with listeners. But the other thing I was thinking about is, yeah, I feel like there's so much still of an existing stigma on this subject that some people may be afraid to like share this content, or like this
Right.
content. So It's crazy
Well,
because back in the day, you could say the same thing about weed content, right? Like you wouldn't
oh
share
yeah.
this type of show because it's like, well, then somebody
Mhm.
might know that I smoke weed and then I might get in trouble, you know? Like,
The stigma, the legalization issues, there's so many parallels to the cannabis industry and the legal sex work industry. I think you did a good job of showing those parallels. And while somebody who is in the cannabis camp is like, what are you doing? There are parallels here, okay?
yeah.
What affects us is going to affect y'all. So let's keep talking about this. Let's get this to where it's a normal conversation where nobody's afraid to talk about it.
Well said. Well said. Well, folks, as always, I hope you found as much value in this conversation as I did. Once again, before I go, check out the conversations that we've had on this subject at thecolememo.com/sex. We get deep into Tori's past and we talk to so many other faces, as I mentioned. But if you were wondering, deeper things about like how did her kids find out and all those things, I asked her about that in previous episodes. So once again, thecolememo.com/sex. Tori, thank you so much. And folks, we'll see you in the
Thank
next
you.
episode.